Hey guys, welcome to Bethel Online. My name is Jason. I'm one of the pastors here, and we're so glad you decided to make us a part of your weekend. No matter who you are, where you come from, we're so glad you're here. Our vision is to be a safe place for real people to encounter the real Jesus and experience real change. Our hope and our prayer is that no matter who you are or what you've been through, you know that you are loved and you are wanted here. We would love to get to know you better and help you connect with all that's going on. You can do this by going to our website at www.bethel.us or by downloading the Bethel app. You can find our app by searching Bethel Putco in your app store. Both online and in the app, you can fill out digital connection card. It only takes a minute and it'll help us know how to serve you better. Another way you can connect today is through giving. Your generosity at Bethel directly impacts God's mission to radically change people's lives in Putnam County and beyond. Through the ministries of Bethel and the many local and regional organizations we support, people are able to see the grace of God and how much He loves them. You can always give on our website at bethel.us/give or in the Bethel app. Thank you for partnering with us and making a difference. Well, thanks again for tuning in online today. Know that you are wanted and welcome here, and you are loved. I hope you all have a great day.
Good morning and welcome to Bethel Online. Thanks for joining us this morning as we enter into week 4 of our series, Unshakable. Now, the overall picture of the book of Daniel is a story of an unfavorable time for God's people and how God is sovereign over all things in all times. It's a message that's written to show that God is sovereign in all circumstances. But there's a sub-story to the main story that's worth talking about. The character Daniel, living in this suboptimal situation, pulled away from his people, brought into a government that has literally destroyed his nation, Judah, has brought him in, and he is an outsider on the inside of the very empire that had created the havoc for his life. You have a disparity of characters here. You have this character, Daniel, who seems to maintain a level of faithfulness, integrity, and humility. And you have a character, Nebuchadnezzar, who seems to be an evil, unpredictable, terror-inducing, worldly, powerful king. And throughout the story in the book of Daniel, you see how these prideful leaders seem to never fully thrive, while Daniel thrives in his faith. Today, we come to a point in the passage in Daniel chapter 4 where King Nebuchadnezzar has just seen God show up in a powerful way, and he seems to have a little response to God showing up in a powerful way. He had placed 3 men from Judah in a fiery furnace to kill them over a stupid law he was pressured to make. And when he threw them into the fiery furnace, he thought surely the story was over. But when they opened up the fiery furnace, there were not just the 3 men, there was another which he said looked like the sons of God. He had encountered the power of God over his own power. And he begins by making this statement. He says, "To the nations and peoples of every language who live in all the earth, may you prosper greatly. It is my pleasure to tell you about the miraculous signs and wonders that the Most High God has performed for me. How great are His signs, how mighty His wonders. His kingdom is an eternal kingdom. His dominion endures from generation to generation." Sounds like maybe Nebuchadnezzar had a conversion after he witnessed God's move. The reality is that Many of us have an encounter with God, but have to choose what we'll do with the encounter. And it seems that this could have been a moment where Nebuchadnezzar, having seen the power of the living God, might experience some change. But what we see happen is that pride that he had shown previously continues to show up now. It continues to eke back. We as Christ followers have to be on guard against our pride, because our pride can be very destructive. We're going to walk through this passage, and it's actually a fairly long passage, so we're going to move relatively quickly this morning. And this morning I want to focus specifically on the pride that we see exhibited, because I think all of us, Christian, non-Christian, we have the ability to meet God and encounter God. And when we do, our proper response is humility. A real encounter with God calls us to a humility, not pride. And pride is really hard to kill. It's a job that all of us must take seriously, because just like Nebuchadnezzar, we can slip back into our pride. But God has also called his people to be like Daniel and to remain humble and usable regardless of our circumstances. Nebuchadnezzar begins to tell a story. He said, I was home in my palace, contented and prosperous. By the way, that is a point where pride can really slip in. When things are going your way, it's really easy for pride to slip in. He said, I had a dream that made me afraid. As I was lying in bed, the images and visions that passed through my mind terrified me. So I commanded that all the wise men of Babylon be brought before me to interpret the dream for me. When the magicians, enchanters, astrologers, and diviners came, I told them the dream, but they couldn't interpret it for me. Finally, Daniel came into my presence, and I told him the dream. He is called Belteshazzar after the name of my God, and the spirit of the holy God is in him. Now here's the thing. God had given Daniel specific gifts for his time that was a suboptimal time in the history of God's people. He had given him specific gifts to allow him to show the world around him the sovereignty of his God. And one of the gifts he had given him is to read and understand the king's dreams. And this could be a high pressure situation to try to determine what a dream meant for a king over a kingdom. I said, Belteshazzar, Daniel, chief of the magicians, I know that the spirit of the holy gods is in you, and no mystery is too difficult for you. Here is my dream, interpret it from me. Now, Nebuchadnezzar had seen the power of God through Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, who were men like Daniel. But he refused to recognize that what was in him was not the power of the dead gods that his people worshiped and the pagan gods that he worshiped, but he continued to try to make Daniel take a name, Belteshazzar, that was not his name or his identity. He refers to him as a magician here, but Daniel isn't a magician at all. He's simply a man humbled to God for his service in his period of history. He asked him to interpret the dream. He says, these are the visions I saw while lying in bed. I looked, and there before me stood a tree in the middle of the land. Its height was enormous. The tree grew large and strong, and its top touched the sky. It was invisible to the ends of the earth. Its leaves were beautiful, its fruit abundant, and on it was food for all. Under it the wild animals found shelter, and the birds lived in its branches. From it every creature was fed. In the visions I saw while lying in bed, I looked, and there before me was a holy one, a messenger coming down from heaven. He called in a loud voice, cut down the tree and trim off its branches. Strip off its leaves and scatter its fruit. Let the animals flee from under it and the birds from its branches. But let the stump and its roots, bound with iron and bronze, remain in the ground in the grass of the field. Let him be drenched with the dew of heaven, and let him live with the animals among the plants in the earth. Let his mind be changed from that of a man, and let it let him be given the mind of an animal till 7 times 7 pass by for him. This decision is announced by the messengers. The holy ones declare the verdict, so that the living may know that the Most High is sovereign over all kingdoms on earth, and gives them to anyone he wishes, and sets over them the lowliest of people. This is the dream that I, King Nebuchadnezzar, had. Now, Belteshazzar, tell me what it means, for none of the wise men in my kingdom can interpret it for me. But you can, because the spirit of the holy gods is in you. Now, he doesn't realize it, but this dream is a warning. And if you're Daniel, you now hear the dream and know that you must tell him that this dream was a warning to him. It's really a warning about his pride and arrogance and his assumption of sovereignty over the kingdom. It's a warning against his pride. Kings usually surround themselves with people who like to tell them what they already think, with people who give them good news rather than bad news. So now Daniel, an outsider, is in a vulnerable spot of having to tell the king that this is a warning for him. Then Daniel was greatly perplexed for a time. I'm assuming he was stressed at the news he was going to have to deliver, and his thoughts terrified him. So the king said, Belteshazzar, do not let this dream or its meaning alarm you. Belteshazzar answered, my lord, if only the dream applied to your enemies and its meaning to your adversaries. The tree you saw, which grew large and strong, with its top touching the sky, visible to the whole earth, with beautiful leaves and abundant fruit, providing food for all, giving shelter to the wild animals, and having nesting places in the branches for the birds. Your majesty, you are that tree. Truth be known, the area of Nebuchadnezzar's power had been great from a worldly standpoint. His power was obvious. Your Majesty, Daniel said, you saw a holy one, a messenger coming down from heaven and saying, cut down the tree and destroy it. But leave the stump bound with iron and bronze in the grass field while its roots remain in the ground. Let him be drenched with the dew of heaven. Let him live with the wild animals until 7 times pass for him. This is the interpretation, Your Majesty, and this is the decree that the Most High has issued against my lord the king. You will be driven away from people and will live with the wild animals. You will eat grass like the ox, be drenched with the dew of heaven. 7 times will pass, 7 years, until you acknowledge that the Most High is sovereign over all kingdoms on earth and gives them to anyone else he wishes. That the message from God was that until Nebuchadnezzar acknowledged that God was sovereign over him, he had a warning of what was to come. The command to leave the stump of the tree with its roots means that your kingdom will be restored to you when you acknowledge that heaven rules. Therefore, Your Majesty, be pleased to accept my advice. Renounce your sins by doing what is right, and your wickedness by being kind to the oppressed. It may be that then you will continue. All of this happened to King Nebuchadnezzar. So Nebuchadnezzar gets this warning, and you see that it's another opportunity after a prior opportunity to encounter a word from God, to encounter Daniel, a reflection of God, God's love, to be his warning, to an opportunity to dim his pride and call God sovereign over all things. But the pride in Nebuchadnezzar wouldn't let it happen. It couldn't be put to death. So a year later, probably having started to forget about this warning, Nebuchadnezzar is walking on the roof of the royal palace of Babylon. I imagine he's looking out over all the kingdoms and the smaller areas that he controls, thinking, look at all of this. He said, is it not the great Babylon I have built as the royal residence, by my mighty power and for the glory of my majesty? Even as the words were on his lips, a voice came from heaven and said, "This is what has been decreed for you, King Nebuchadnezzar. Your royal authority has been taken from you." He had a year. He had some time to put his pride to death. Instead, he fed his pride instead of humility. Instead of praising the sovereign God, he chose to be the God of his life. There was a place for him to turn around, and there's a place for you and I to turn around and call God sovereign over all things. He says, "You will be driven away from people and live with the wild animals. You'll eat grass like the ox. 7 times will pass for you until you acknowledge that the Most High is sovereign over all kingdoms on earth and gives them to anyone he wishes." Immediately, what had been said about Nebuchadnezzar was fulfilled. He was driven away from people and ate grass like the ox. His body was drenched with the dew of heaven until his hair grew like the feathers of an eagle and his nails like the claws of a bird. He became unkempt, went out into the field, ate grass like an ox. Here's this formerly highly prestigious king who his pride has driven him to insanity. It's interesting. Back in an earlier passage, Daniel and Meshach and Shadrach and Abednego and all of the satraps and leaders were told to consume food from the king's table. But Daniel, out of a desire not to defile himself, asked just to eat the vegetables. One scholar that I read this week says that there's an actual illness that can cause such a brain deficiency in chemicals caused by eating rich camel meat solely and lacking other minerals because of what it takes to digest that meat, that it will begin to create mental instability and nearly insanity if certain vitamins continue to be missing from the diet. And it can cause a deep-seated craving to eat fiber and foods with those minerals. Here Nebuchadnezzar is, a man who had been filled with pride, who finds the consequence of his ungodly, prideful life. This formerly highly powerful king is now reduced to a field for 7 years. And then King Nebuchadnezzar continues to tell the story. At the end of that time, I, Nebuchadnezzar, raised my eyes toward heaven. By the way, if you're trying to figure out how to deal with pride in your life, it first starts by looking at the heavens, by looking at God. When we take an honest look at God rather than comparing ourselves to others, we are made aware of His power and sovereignty over our lives. When we continue to look at the world around us and ignore Him, pride will tempt us to come in. He said, when I turn my eyes toward heaven, pride is an insane response in relation to God. He raises his eyes to heaven and his sanity is restored. Then I praised the Most High. I honored and glorified Him who lives forever. His dominion is an eternal dominion. His kingdom endures from generation to generation. All the peoples of the earth are regarded as nothing. He does as He pleases with the powers of heaven and the peoples of the earth. No one can hold back His hand or say to Him, "What have you done?" You see, the kingdom had tried to take Daniel's identity. It had tried to change who he was. It had tried to brainwash him with its ideas. But at the end of the day, they couldn't overpower the sovereignty of God in Daniel with the sovereignty of the powerful nation and empire. At the same time that my sanity was restored, my honor and splendor were returned to me for the glory of my kingdom. My advisors and nobles sought me out, and I was restored to my throne and became even greater than before. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, now here's the conversion, praise and exalt and glorify the King of heaven, because everything he does is right and all his ways are just, and those who walk in pride he is able to humble. Notice that God uses the humble spirit of Daniel over time in not so great situations to show a powerful leader his sovereignty. Never underestimate what God can do with a life that is humbly committed to him. You see, pride steals God's glory. Pride shows up in the weirdest of ways. As a matter of fact, if you're thinking today, well, I'm not really a prideful person, you're probably being prideful in saying you're not being prideful. Because pride lives in all of us. It's this ability to rise up and say, well, I raised myself up by my bootstraps and I did this by my power, and to ignore the power of God in us that equipped us and made us able. Pride steals God's glory. God gives warnings to us in our pride. Some of you, this very message is a warning to you to put your pride to death, to humble yourself, to be willing to not say, God, I'm going to have my way, but have your way in me, God. God gives multiple warnings to Nebuchadnezzar. So often we wind up in these horrible situations and we're like, why did you do this to me, God? But we've been warned over and over and over of the danger of the pride that's lurking in us, the pride that needs to be killed rather than fed. You see, pride brings devastating consequences on our life. A king that could have lived in the highest quality of life finds himself living where he never thought he would, lowered down to a place he didn't think he could. Absolutely devastating consequences for him and the empire he served. Number 4, humility leads to restoration and worship. That when we choose humility, God will restore us. And then we will worship him, and it's hard to be prideful to something that we worship. Here's a 3-point plan to kill pride. Number 1, look up. Fix your eyes on God's greatness. If you're battling with pride today, if it's eking into your relationships, you're in a tug of war with someone else just for the pride of trying to prove that you're right and you're damaging the relationship, fix your eyes on God's greatness. You'll be willing to humble yourself. Stop loving so much the being correct and start loving God. It will lead you to love others. Look up. Number 2, confess down. For some of us, it's just the acknowledgement that, hey, I've been feeding this pride in me that needs to die. And maybe I need to be honest about the truth about me, rather than working on the image that looks put together and lined out and strong. I need to acknowledge that any strength in me comes from God. Acknowledge God's sovereignty and your limitations. Number 3, live out. Want to stay humble? Serve other people. Some of the most humbling experiences of my life have been in acts of service. These can be acts of service in your very home, in the community, to people you don't understand. I remember serving in a homeless shelter as a freshman in college for a month. I literally lived in the homeless shelter for a period of time and just served people. My entire role was to help people. And before I went into this, I thought I knew all the answers to homelessness. I didn't understand all of the mental struggles that went along with homelessness. I didn't understand all of the way that life could be stacked against you as a person and how hard it was to come back from it. And I had a proud mindset, though I had done nothing to deserve my place in the world. And the longer and longer that I served the people, the more and more I saw them as equals. And how blessed I had been by God. How fortunate of a life I had seen. You want to remain humble, serve people you don't have to? That's exactly what Jesus did when he carried his cross to Golgotha, where they killed him on the cross to pay a price that you couldn't pay once and for all time for your sins. To begin building his kingdom in the middle of one of the strongest empires in history. Friend, we really have nothing to be proud of and everything to be grateful for and every reason to be humbled before God. Humbled people make a difference in this world. A couple questions. Are you building your kingdom or God's kingdom? You see, pride may climb high, but it always falls. Humility bows low, but God lifts it up. I've seen the most externally strong and powerful people crumble when life gets hard. We will wind up humble one way or another. The scripture says even those who go into eternity, into heaven, that the response will be to bow before God. That there is a response in eternity where the angels sing, holy, holy, holy. The perfect act of humility. Start singing it now. It will change your life. I love you, Bethel. Have a great week.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Are you ready to take your next step? We would love to hear from you. You can send an email to hello@bethel.us. You can send us a message on Facebook, or you can let us know in the Bethel app. And speaking of the Bethel app, take a moment, if you haven't already, to go to your app store and search Bethel Putco to download our app. There's all kinds of great resources in the app. You can listen to messages, you can view the messages for Sunday morning, and you can also fill out a digital Connect card. You can do that today and each week to let us know that you're tuning in. You can also find some great information about our Bethel Kids Ministry and our Be the One student ministries. Also in the app, you can give. It's one of 3 ways you can give, with online giving at bethel.us/give, in our app, Bethel Putco, or through text. Hey, thanks again for joining us. We hope you have a great day and know that you are loved.